A few years ago, I was in a car accident. Since then, I don't really leave the house often. It's difficult, and the idea of seeing another car drive by makes me feel lightheaded. One day after the crash, a friend of mine showed me on Google Maps. I'm sure you've seen it. It lets you use satellite imagery to look at locations all over the world. I was fascinated by the fact that I could see anywhere I wanted, and I could virtually walk down the streets. It almost feels like I was actually there. I became instantly hooked. It gave me a real eye on the world. I could go to almost any major city, and I did. I'd seen streets in China, Japan, Germany, England, so many places. I'd even gone tourist attractions like the Great Barrier Reef and Dracula's Castle. My favorite thing was to go through the random places in the major cities and see how many people and animals I could find. People's faces were always blurred into the project of their privacy, but it was still enjoyable to see them out there, living their lives, walking around like it was no big deal. She must have a good taste, I laughed. I zoomed in closer and noticed a gray bag one woman carried on a gray and purple shoulder strap. She was walking in a relaxed manner, her left hand trailing the wall behind her. I bet if I could have seen her face, she would have been smiling. I began to feel a little sad. I let my hands fall into the arms of my wheelchair and looked at her for a moment more. I wished that I could be there, walking so carefree with her. That wouldn't happen until I died, though. Until then, I was stuck in this chair. I sighed and zoomed out of Tokyo. Enough of this for tonight. I turned off the computer and went to bed. I got up early and decided to look around Paris. Paris was always fun, and I liked the look of the city, with all of the old, beautiful buildings and so many people to watch. I randomly zoomed in on an area and saw a street lined with an old brick buildings and a small shops and an old tan brick church. Ahead was an intersection with dozens of people walking by. A balding businessman moved past quickly, looking back at the old woman whose hair was covered with a scarf, carrying a large purse. A curvy woman in black pants that were so tight started to sew through a store window, and two other women led a group of small children around a corner. I spun the view around a few more times and then saw something peculiar. Sitting on the bench on the bus stop were two people. One of them was a young woman with her feet stuck out in front of her in a relaxed manner. She was wearing a pair of old sneakers, like my own. I was startled for a moment when I noticed the black pants, white t-shirt, and black hooded jacket. Her dark brown hair was tied loosely behind her head. A gray bag sat on the bench beside her, the shoulder strap hooked over her shoulder. This is crazy, I thought. It can't possibly be the same woman. This is a different country. A different containment even. How could it be her? This was stupid. It wasn't as if these were live photographs. They were taken off of ahead of time and then stored. It's not like she was at two places at once. She could be just a traveler. Besides, without seeing her face, it was impossible to tell if she was the same person. Brown hair was probably the most common hair color in the world. Those red sneakers were something I purchased online. I'm sure a million other people did too. I shook my head and went off to fix some lunch. When I got back online, I decided to visit Berlin. I picked up a random road, as per usual. It looked pretty empty. There were brick buildings lining the streets, looking more factories than anything else. There were also empty lots full of long grass and piled gravel. There was even a line of motorbikes and a car with two German flags sticking up on it. But really, there wasn't much to see at all. After more searching, I found a kid. He looked like he was dressed for school. A jacket thrown over his bag. He was gazing intently at some sort of mobile device. I was disappointed. I started to leave, but then I caught something out of my corner of my eye. I turned the view and there they were, those damn red sneakers. She was standing on a street corner, next to some kind of signpost. She had one hand on the post, looking down the street, as if she was waiting to cross it. I stared at it in shock. How could she even be there too? Even if she was traveling, there was no way I'd find her every time. Even finding her in Paris would even be one heck of a coincidence. But this was crazy. Was this some kind of joke? Had Google decided to play a prank on whichever accounts used their product the most? It would have been a giant joke. I did a quick search, looking for anything about the woman that shows up like Waldo. There was nothing. I looked through the articles on strange things you can see on Google Maps, but none of them mentioned a woman that travels around the world with you. This is crazy. Had my self-imposed isolation driven me mad? Had I become so lonely that I created a hallucination for myself? Leaving the Berlin image on my screen, I sent a text message to a friend, asking him to look at the locations himself and tell me if he saw the same woman. Then I waited, hands sweaty, heart thumping in my chest. I jumped when my phone beeped with the returned text message 10 minutes later. It read, "I see the lady you're talking about, Berlin. I didn't see her in Paris or Tokyo. Is this some kind of game or what? Are you okay?" I didn't respond. Instead, returning to the locations in Tokyo and Paris. There she was. She was there, but something was different. She no longer sat on the bus stop bench in Paris. She was standing in front of it, looking for something in her bag in Tokyo. She was blocks away, squatting down to a pet calico cat. I shivered. Who was she? What was happening? I switched the map to Brussels. It was another city lined with old-looking buildings, shops on the ground level, and what I guessed were apartments above. I quickly scanned the sidewalks. They were empty, save for the stocky woman in a bright blue sweater. I did a second sweep. She wasn't there. I sighed in relief. I couldn't believe I was getting so worked up over this. It was nothing but a coincidence. I stopped, my eyes frozen on the screen. There was a building at the point with the fork in the road, white with a black iron-flamed balcony jutting from the second floor. I hadn't seen her as I'd been looking at the sidewalks. There she stood, standing on the balcony, her head tilted in the direction of the camera, almost like she was coiling, looking toward me. My breath caught in my throat as I switched to Sydney. She was leaning against the wall inside the doorway of a bright blue Carcass pharmacy building. London showed her getting ready to step out into the double red Decker bus. Her head turned over to her shoulder. She was everywhere. I looked. She then stood on a brick sidewalk on the bridge of Vince. She walked across the yellow barrage-steered side crosswalk in Zurich, and in Hong Kong she stood between a Wing Lun bank and a McDonald's, adjusting the strap of her bag. In each picture she came closer and closer to looking directly at me with her blurred-out face. My heart felt like it was a terrified bird, slamming around inside my chest that I couldn't catch a breath. I wasn't sure what to do. I couldn't call the police. I was wondering if I could send screenshots to Google. I clenched my fists tightly and closed my eyes. Who was she? Was she following me? Was I following her? I wish I could see the expression on her face, know what she saw. She looked back at me. I wanted to get out of my chair and run. Why was it the only thing that made me feel free again, also made me feel even more trapped? I had to know. I typed the name of my hometown and zoomed into a random sheet. It was a couple of miles from my house. The gates of the city park were shown in the clarity of daylight, despite it being night here currently. There she was. There was she. She was only a few miles from my house, standing under the ironwork arch that stated the name of the park. She looked directly at the camera, directly at me. I felt like I might throw up. She was near me, and she was watching me. She was coming for me. What did she want? I typed in the name of the apartment complex where I live, and I could see outside the building. Outside the lot were full of cars. A few blurred out some children on the playground. I searched everywhere for her. She wasn't in the parking lot or the sidewalks, nor hiding between the buildings or standing in the playground. I even scanned each of the cars behind the bushes and every one of those blurred windows. She wasn't there. I curled tightly around myself and lay my head down on the desk. This place was safe. I didn't leave the apartment anyway. I would never use Google Maps again. I would never see her again. She could stay at the park for all I care. I smiled to myself and was surprised to find a tear slipping down my face. I'm safe, I told myself in a whisper. It felt good to hear it out loud. I'm safe. As I sat there was a knock at the door. A chill ran down my spine. I had a camera hooked up to my computer that showed me who was at the front of the door to help with my mobility issues. I reached for the control to show myself who was outside, but the hand trembled furiously. As I touched it, I realized the mistake. The last of Google's images that I had seen only showed the outside of the building, just the outside. I looked at the screen and saw a woman in a white t-shirt, black pants, and a black hooded jacket, carrying a gray bag and with a purple and gray striped shoulder strap. Of course, there were those red sneakers. She looked directly at the camera, her face still a complete blur. As I tried to stifle a scream, she raised my hand and knocked loudly on my front door.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.